Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 21st of March, and it's about 20 to 3 in the afternoon. Hope everybody's alright. And yes, we're into Holy Week. Lead up to Easter. This week I've only got a couple of days to work, which will be fun. Thursday, Friday, Saturday off. So, relaxation. Hope everybody gets a lot of Easter eggs and chocolate and the like. Right, last year I did a 2-part talk on Holy Week. One was Palm Sunday and one was Good Friday. So I'm going to stick with the religious theme today, but in a bit of a different way. This year, let me pull this a bit closer. Over the last year, there's been some major changes in the gay community. With the votes in America about gay marriage and stuff like that. And also the big protests from the Christian element. As I said before, I'm Christian. And I'm gay. And as of this, I've seen lots of comments posted and lots of comments said, quoting Bible. So I decided I would address this. And here we have notes. Notes are good. Oh, notes are always good. So let's first off talk about some of these organisations. First off, the most famous one is the Westbro Baptist Church in America that you see picketing funerals and stuff like that. First off, if they are Christian, I don't want to be Christian. They're the most hateful bunch of people going. But there's still people that come up with quotes and stuff like that from the Bible, and as a Christian that has read the Bible from to back, I go, I don't see that in the Bible. First off, you've got the Bible. I've got what Joe sent me. You can look through the Bible and you can find quotes that would condone anything. Murder, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Genocide. I mean, in the Old Testament, God were telling the Israelites to wipe out this tribe and that tribe to get the Holy Lands. I think if I went through it, I could find examples for rape, incest. Taking a single verse from a Bible, you can twist it round whatever way you want. And that's what a lot of people have done with the gay community. Took a few quotes from the Bible and twisted it round to make their own belief. Well, to suit their own belief. Right, the first thing is translations of the Bibles. As I've said before, there's multiple translations. And some are good translations, some are rubbish, to be honest. So, the first question I ask, what translation do you use? Most people have heard of the King James Version. I like the King James Version. I like the poetic references in it, the way it flows and stuff like that. So if somebody who's anti-gay or whatever says, oh, I use the King James Version, the first thing to point out is King James was supposed to be gay. The bloke that authorised the Bible was actually one of the boys. See the look on the face then. But let's get into it. There's quite a few verses that are used, and the most popular ones I've picked out. First on, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. People choose Sodom because sodomy act of anal sex, that's what I've come to know, they think automatically it's to do with that. First off, some people don't even know where the story of Sodom is. It is actually in Genesis. I've actually written down the verse, chapters and verses where necessary. It's in Genesis 14 to 19. Basically, chapter 19 is about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's talk about Sodom and Gomorrah first. They were sort of twin towns in the same area. A lot of trade and commercial between them. The story is set when Abraham and his family were travelling to the Holy Land, the land flowing with milk and honey. On the way there, his brother got a bit fed up. These towns there, I'm going to live there. Like I says, with Sodomy, people think it was a gay town. It wasn't. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is about man's inhumanity to man. There were thieves, murderers, rapists, blasphemers, idol worshippers and stuff like that. And God said, I'm going to destroy both towns. And Lot said, well, he says, find me one good man and I will spare both towns. Lot couldn't find anybody and destroyed both towns. So it's actually got nothing to do with gay sex. I'm not saying there weren't gay people there, but it's more about man's inhumanity to man. But like I says, people heard the word Sodom, sodomy. That's why the town was destroyed. And no, it's not. The next one we come into, what a lot of people hear of, is the sin of Onan. Basically, the classic line is spilt his seed on the ground. So people think of masturbation. Nope. It is actually in Genesis 38. And what it talks about is basically what they call coitus interruptus. Well, a lot of people think of rhythm method, a form of birth control. Basically, before you ejaculate, you withdraw. And the story is Onan, as in the custom of that time, he was single, so he was supposed to marry his brother's widow. He didn't want to produce a child with her, so he practiced coitus interruptus, ejaculated on the ground. And all because of that, God decided to punish him by killing him. We have to look into the context of the land and the time. Basically, they were trying to build up this new kingdom, the Israelites. So therefore, the best way to build up a kingdom and build up a tribe and build up a nation is to produce children. So therefore, when you had sex with a woman, you had to give it a chance to produce a child. And that was one of God's laws. Onan decided to ignore it, and he was punished and killed by God. Not very nice, but it's got nothing to do with masturbation. Nothing to do with tossing off or anything like that. Nothing. We have to take things in the contextual climate of the time and area. In the Bible, there's only really 2 verses that deal with gay sex. And they come from the book of Leviticus. Now, Leviticus is one of these great books that have all these rules and regulations in, laws. The first thing is, you say to somebody about Leviticus, how many laws are there? And a lot of people will say 10. Because they get mixed up with Levitican law with the 10 Commandments. They are 2 different things. Well, they're basically two different things. But the Ten Commandments come into Levitical law. Levitical law, there are actually in the Torah 613 rules, of which 247 come from Leviticus. But people concentrate on these two passages alone. This is the biggest disclaimer to homosexuality going. But the same people who use this argument seem to forget about the other 611. I mean, some of the famous ones are, you're not allowed to eat pork. Leviticus 11, 7 to 8, verses 7 to 8. You're not allowed to eat pork. These people that say, well, in Leviticus it says this, ask them if they like pork, if they like ham, sausage, bacon. Another one, Leviticus chapter 11, verse 16, says you're not allowed to eat shellfish, prawns, shrimp, crab, lobster, mussels, cockles, whelks. And you're not allowed to wear mixed fibres. That's in Leviticus, can't read my handwriting there. It's either chapter 14 verse 19 or chapter 19 verse 19. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Not allowed to mix fibres. In the modern world, how difficult is that? If you want to, pause the video and go and look in your closet, your wardrobes, look at your shirts. And I can guarantee a lot of shirts will say something like 70% cotton, 30% polyester and stuff like that. There is actually a bloke, and Joe was telling me about it, he wrote a book called Living a Year of the Life. Living a Year in the Law. Don't know if it was successful. But he did a year of living the Levitican law. Don't know how successful it was or how much pressure it put on him. But the simple things like you're not allowed to sit where your wife sits if she's having a period. Just think about that. Simple things like going to the toilet. If in your house, if you only have one toilet and she's using it, what are you supposed to do for the week, 2 weeks that she's on, as we would say, on the rag? Where are you supposed to go to do your business? There's other laws also that people just seem to forget. You must think is, these are people that are Christians that are using this as an example of the fight against homosexuality. And yet they don't follow the other laws. My opinion is, if you're going to pick something out of one of these laws, say, well, Levitical law says, then you've got to follow the other 611 of those laws. Doesn't matter how difficult it is, you have to follow them. But the two verses are, the first one comes from chapter 20, verse 13. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall be put to death, their blood is upon them. Okay, the other one comes from chapter 18, verse 22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. Self-explanatory then. Until you start looking at the translations. When you go back to the original Hebrew, it does actually, the chapter 18 verse 22 does actually say, two men must not engage in sexual activity on a woman's bed. It is ritually unclean. Now that's a bit different to the King James version of it. It doesn't say you can't engage in sex, it just says you can't engage in sex on a woman's bed. I mean, when I've said before, it comes down to context, language, translations. If you go back to the original Hebrew from the scrolls, compared to the Bible, it's two different meanings. Two different... The first one says you can't have sex. The second one says, well, yeah, you can have sex as long as you don't do it on a woman's bed. On your wife's bed. Those are the big ones. Those are the big ones from the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we've got a couple of minor ones. I mean, we've got Paul's letters, and a lot of people use them. I mean, let's first start off. Again, it's down to context. I mean, Paul talks in Corinth, chapter 11, verses 11 to 15, that men should have short hair, women should have long hair. But it was relevant to that culture of Corinth. It also talks about women should be subservient, they should not teach, they should not lead. Today we would say that is absolutely rubbish. Let's be honest here. I mean, in the context of the time, yes. The context now, no. We have to evolve. We have to evolve. And that includes our religious perceptions. What was relevant in biblical time and what's relevant now is two total different things. But there are a couple of verses that mentioned. Romans 1, chapter 26 to 32. First letter to the Corinthians, chapter 6, verses 9. And the first letter to Timothy, chapters 1, verse 10. Most of these are talking about being respectful to yourself. And also, some of the latter ones are talking about temple prostitution. Now, we are talking in a time of Nero. You know Nero that fiddled while Rome burned? Well, probably didn't fiddle, it probably a lute or a lyre or something like that. We're talking about this bloke who had murdered two of his wives, his previous two wives. They'd married a young boy that he proceeded to castrate because the boy looked like one of his previous wives. Okay, but it talks about prostitution. A lot of them talk about temple prostitution. And we're talking about prostitution in the pagan churches, especially the ones about Apollo and Aphrodite's and... oh, what was the other one? I forget the other one now. And we're talking about temple prostitution. Now, it does mention men. It doesn't say men having sex with men. Oh, it does. But it doesn't say anything about men having sex with women, bisexual men, or whatever. It just generally talks about prostitution. What the hell was that? Some sort of big bang went outside. Don't know if somebody's crashed. What's that? Can't see anything, so there's no explosions. But yeah, it talks about temple prostitution and how it's wrong, how it's wicked, evil, etc. So yeah, it does mention gay sex, but it's more in the prostitution line. Not in love, two people loving each other, but in the climate of prostitution. But basically, those are it. Those are the quotes that are given time and time again. First off, sodomy? No. Sin of Onan, coitus interruptus, Leviticus? Yeah, depending what translation you read, but unless if you go back to the original Hebrew, the second has nothing to do with the first. And then Paul's letters. You look at these protesters, how many the placards have these verses on. Not the really two legitimate ones. It could be from the Leviticus. But then again, actually start quoting them on Levitical law. And I watch them squirm. I saw a bloke once that had a banner up about Leviticus. And he had a tattoo on his arm. I went, oh, you got a tattoo? Yeah. Oh. Quoting Leviticus there, you went, yeah, Levitical law, you're not supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do... Well, according to Levitical law, you're not supposed to have tattoos. And his face went, what? I went, yeah, according to Levitical law, you're not supposed to have tattoos. So, if I'm going to go to hell because I'm gay, what's going to happen to you? Defacing your body, the temple of God. You know, these are the sort of things you can get people on. So let's talk about what is actually said as a Christian by Jesus. Do you know what? Nothing. He doesn't approach the subject. He doesn't talk about the subject. What he does talk about is forgiveness and grace and love. To people out there that are critical and stuff like that, I throw out the first thing Jesus said. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Under Levitical law, Jesus was a bit of a radical. Again, from that verse, where did it come from? The adulteress. Under Levitical law, an adulteress should be stoned to death. What does Jesus do? He intervenes and she is saved. So under Levitical law, he wasn't following the true context of Levitical law. Jesus said, I come here to set father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother, sister against... He was a radical. He was coming to change the rules. He was coming to change the regulations. He says, I am the new covenant. In other words, the old covenant is no longer valid. But it's such a big deal. Don't you think he would have said something? It does talk about adultery. These guys that are married and see blokes on the side, yeah, it does talk about adultery. Cheating on your partners. Again, with the woman adulteress says, go and sin no more. Like it says from the Bible, and it's not just the Bible, I bet it's every religious text, you can pull verses out, twist them round to make it sound whatever you want to believe. Until you actually read the full chapter. And then you go, oh, okay. Yeah, it means that, but it's not in that context. So, but I just thought I'd give my own personal opinion on it. See what people think. People are interested in the Levitical law. They're all on slide 613 of them. You can gladly scroll through them and see how many you break. I scroll through them and trust me, there's a lot I break. There's more I break than I actually keep, I think. But yeah, it's the old laws. It was the context of the land, building a tribe, building a nation, where they wanted people to have sex with women, to produce children, because having sex with a bloke. The interesting thing is, the Leviticus talks about men. Do you know lesbianism is not mentioned at all? Lesbianism is not mentioned at all. You don't get equivalent verse saying if a woman lies with a woman. No, you don't get that at all. It's just those poor gay men that are the pariahs of society then. Yeah, but I just thought I'd do a quick version of this, see what people think. But like it says, a lot of these, like it says, Sodom, Onan, the letters to Paul, if you read the full chapters, it's got nothing to do with what the people are saying. They are quotes took out of context. The Leviticus 18:22, if you go back to the original Hebrew and Greek, it's total different meaning. It's again people choosing verses that to fit their belief. And I'll tell you who some of the worst people are. Christians. I'm sorry, but some of the worst people are Christians. Read your Bible. Know your Bible. Okay, no, I'm going to leave it there. I think I've said enough on this subject. So I hope all of you have a good Easter. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.